welcome to the August 2022 Raleigh Astronomy Club imaging meeting. Tonight's meeting will be on processing or teasing out the Interstellar Flux Nebula. Our presenter tonight, who's been in the club since early 2020, Naveen, Malik, has been on the forefront processing out the Interstellar Flux Nebula. Oh, that's a mouthful. And he's going to show us his findings. Wait for Naveen.
All right, thanks, Chris. So yeah, I've been playing around with, well, I mean, we all play around with dust and image processing because we're looking at generally a lot of nebula. And when I thought about presenting this topic and how it is I go about processing specifically interstellar flux nebula, the question comes up like, well, okay, what does that mean? And I wanted to take a step back before we dive into anything about processing and whatnot, just kind of unpack, what is a nebula. And I went a lot further down the rabbit hole and looking at like word origins and stuff like that, but it was, to me, unpronounceable things, so I didn't include all of it in this presentation. But the word nebula is Latin, and it simply means a fog, cloud, or a vapor. Today, the definition, from an astronomy perspective, is a cloud of interstellar gas and dust. And added in here, the former definition of any celestial object that appears nebulous, hazy, or fuzzy, and extended in a telescope view. Put that in there because you think about the ability of astronomers, hundreds of years ago to see these objects. They didn't appear like bright and colorful like we see in this picture here. They were faint and fuzzy and kind of guessing on what they look like and naming things based on what they seem to appear like in their known world. So when we look at the common types of nebula, and I don't know if there are some other structures out there that look like nebula that I didn't include or more associated with some more specific types of events, like cool cloud structures around stars that are forming, and there's some neat stuff if you want to go dig into different types of objects that are available in the night sky, but probably at super long focal lengths or for space telescopes. But these are the common ones, the ones that probably are looking at, dark nebula, planetary, supernova remnants, emission nebula, reflection nebula, and then finally the integrated flux nebula. Just going to run through each of these really quick, just to kind of explain the difference and show some. And yeah, so the first one, the dark nebula, it is a dark patch in the sky. So it basically is some structure, dust, that is obscuring the visible wavelengths of light from reaching us. So this is a wide field of, well, the target I was going for is HARO 1-14, which you can't see because it's so small. I didn't realize it until later, but I got, some neat dark nebula structures in here. There's quite a few. And then up over here, I don't know if my mouse is showing, but this is the Snake Nebula, which is pretty popular dark nebula to image. Supernova remnants are what you would think from the name. They're the structure resulting from a supernova. Before we started the recording, we were talking about M1, the Crab Nebula. It's another one which I have not imaged yet. This is the Veil Nebula, wide field. It's in the Cygnus region. Planetary nebulas are interesting, and that's where the former definition of nebula is useful. They're called planetary nebula because, if I've got this right, astronomers that first found these types of structures could see a sphere or a circular object that was approximately relative field of view, approximately the same size as Jupiter. So became named Planetary Nebula for that reason. So they're a glowing shell of gas. It's ejected from red giants late in their life, and I think they're like, if you took two bowls, like cereal bowls or whatever, and put them bottom to bottom, be kind of that kind of a structure. So depending on how the gas is oriented, would change the way that we would perceive it. Emission Nebula is where the gases in cloud are ionized, so they're emitting light at different wavelengths. Common things that we image is in hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and sulfur 2. So you can see that this is the lagoon in the middle, and Trifid Nebula at the top. So it's a little bit of a blue bit there that is oxygen 3, but the rest of it's predominantly hydrogen alpha. So if you're thinking about going for like narrowband imaging, you don't have like narrowband anything, like hydrogen alpha is a great place to consider starting, because there's a lot of hydrogen alpha rich targets in the night sky. A reflection nebula are where interstellar dust is reflecting the light of stars nearby. So this is the Rho Ophiuchi cloud complex. Off on the right, there's I think that's Antares. Hopefully I got that right. And you can see like these yellow regions and the blue regions are, areas where the star light from the stars nearby is being reflected by cloud, or by the dust. This is a really cool region of the sky, because it's got all sorts of stuff going on. Like you've got dark nebula down the middle, and I didn't get a wide enough shot of this yet, but there's like tendrils of dark nebula coming off of it. And then if you panned up, which didn't fit in the slide, there's a reflection, or an emission nebula as well in the structure with, globular cluster. So a lot going on. And then finally, what we're talking about today is the Integrated Flux Nebula. So this was coined relatively recently. I don't have a date, unfortunately. What's neat about this is it's dust in the plane of the galaxy that is being illuminated not by individual stars like we saw with reflection nebula, but by the integrated light, the integrated flux of all the stars of the Milky Way. So you take all of the stars that are nearby, and all of that light combined is what's being reflected off of these dusty regions. So we're going to get into that a little bit more now. So it turns out I really like dusty areas in the night sky, and started off, I think it was sometime spring of last year, I believe, somebody showed an image in the club of the Iris Nebula, at which point I was like, all right, I got to try for this. So I spent time with my setup at the time, the Zenith Star doublet that I mentioned, and the details are here on the slide. Spent I think it was 5 clear nights in July of last year, which we have not had this year, and got this at a basically new moon. So from there, I was like, all right, what else can I go for, and what's up in the night sky? And I went looking and found the Seahorse Nebula. It seemed really cool. It fit in the field of view for my setup. So I went for it, again with the color, one-shot color camera, over a couple months, and I pumped a lot of time into this one. It was a tough target. And I probably spent, I don't know, at least half that much time trying to process it. But it was an interesting target, really challenging. I had a smudge on one of my filters, so I had problems, all these things we learn as we're doing new things. And then another target, I got a monochrome camera, the 2600 mm, ESI 2600 mm, and went for the Pleiades, or M45. I wasn't specifically going for the IFN, or Integrated Flux Nebula, but you can start seeing it off on the sides here a bit, where it's not illuminated by the stars of this cluster, which are, that dust is reflection nebula. It's blue. You've got the fainter or white dust in the surrounding region. So this is a target I want to come back to once it comes around again, see what I can do. And then we had the challenge, which was presented, I believe, last month for Q2 for BODES. And I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I had previously spent time with the DSLR imaging BODES and Cigar Galaxy. Done it with my doublet, with the monochrome camera, and then I had just gotten data with a triplet that I'm now using. And I thought, oh, I don't want to take this again. I've done it 3 times now, kind of tired of it. But I also had a wide field lens, the Rokinon 135. So I thought, all right, let me just try, go wide open, f2. I'm going to go for the Integrated Flux Nebula, see what I can get. So this is a result from that. I put, in hindsight, I put way more time on this than I think I really needed. At f2, this is a huge amount of time. But it was cool. I learned a lot. There's a lot of trial and error in trying to process this and try and bring out some, the dust and not have it looked unbalanced. And we're going to get into that now. I've got slides about the processing of a different image. But I also have, if we have time and people have interest, I also have projects for several of these in PixInsight open on another workspace that we could play around with if that, after sharing this, if there's interest. So processing dust is pretty similar, for what I do at least, is pretty similar to my normal workflow. And I'm a pretty visual person when trying to think about how to share these kinds of things. So I've put together kind of a flow diagram, if you will, of what I've done. And I'm not going to show it all at once, so we can ease into it. The general flow is I take a color image, the RGB, take a luminance, combine them, and then from that I extract the stars, and I have a starless image. And then for the dust, we need to do something to enhance the dust, do some processing on each of these, bring them together in some way at the end so that we can have that, bring the stars back in to the dust. So for this example, I've put a wide field shot of data of the Iris Nebula. I mean, this is why I think the BODES and Cigar wide field that I didn't need as much as the 15 and plus hours I took. So this is an hour and 45 minutes. Same setup as the BODES image. Used a UV IR cut filter taken from my backyard. It's just about a Bortle 6. And so the initial processing, my usual workflow for something like this where I don't have an actual luminance, is I'll take the image, I'll run it through either, I use PixInsight, dynamic background extraction or automatic background extraction, depending on the data. And then from that, I'll extract a luminance. I, do some linear processing to, for the color image, do color calibration. There's a lot of options on how you could do that. I personally like the photometric color calibration. Stretch it. And then something I've learned, and I presented in a previous meeting about for dealing with some color fringing that you might have from a lens or from a doublet, which is what I used until I got the triplet. I convolve the image, and meaning blur it slightly, and then we'll use the luminance, which is then sharpened a little bit depending on the image. I think for these wide fields, I did not sharpen it because it just didn't do anything useful. Denoise it a little bit using your tool of choice, and then stretch it carefully to get it to a level that works when you combine it. So when you do that combination, as I presented in the previous one, you get an image where the color of the stars, the fringing is reduced, if not eliminated. It's at least better. So going from that, dusty, kind of unbalanced, because of the light pollution and whatnot image, and following the steps that I talked through already, you end up with this image on the right of, a nice star field. Looks pretty balanced. I can see around the Iris Nebula here. There is some dusty bits up in the top. There's also a nice dusty V, which is promising. So I'm going to see what we can do to bring that stuff out. So I take that image, typical workflow for myself. I pull the stars out. Some really great tools nowadays for doing this. StarNet V2, which I don't know if it's I said I use PixInsight, so StarNet V2 has been really good for this. I also have the Star Exterminator tool. They're AI-based models, and they each are better at different things. So I'll pick one or the other depending on how well they do with the image, or sometimes even use both of them. So I'll get a starless image and a stars image. And when we do that, you can see the dust much better now. So we've got some structure, some object in the edge here in the bottom. We've got a small little, looks like a barred spiral galaxy on the top. The Iris Nebula itself, which is a reflection nebula. And then a lot of dusty stuff. So once you pull the stars out, it really can see what you might be able to work with. Now, the problem is getting that dust to pop. So if I follow my normal flow, I would, process for the, stars, maybe reduce them a little bit, saturate them a little bit to bring out some more color. For the starless image, play around with color, especially if it's narrowband. Play with contrast to, either curves or levels, histogram transformation, try and make the dust more prominent versus the background, and then bring them together. Yeah, in this case, we haven't done anything where we need to do some layering or composite images. So it'd be in PixInsight, in pixel math, just add one image to the other image. And we go from this, where you can see like a little bit better definition in the dust. Maybe if you flip back and forth between the previous image and this one. If you zoomed in on the iris, it's a little bit sharper, a little bit more defined. But when we bring the stars back in, we still are swamped. We don't really see the dust really well with the stars in there, but I want the stars in there myself because I like the field, I like the color. So we got to do something else. So what I found is, at least for the data sets that I'm working with, and it's with multiple setups. So I've used this technique with the doublet data, the triplet, and the lens that I have. And it seems to work pretty consistently, pretty well. So what I do is I go back in the process, I go to the luminance. And if it's not stretched already, I'll stretch it. It's probably stretched if you had already stretched it for like a LRGB combination. So stretch the luminance, pull the stars out, throw them away. We don't need them. And then curves to very carefully build a dust mask. So I'm using the data in the image to build a mask. And I'm going to walk through what it looks like when I do that. And it's a couple step process, but it's not crazy. Hopefully you'll find it reasonably simple and useful to try out. So this is the initial image. This is the luminance. So, grayscale image, taking all the stars out. I don't care that there's bright areas with like this galaxy and, the Iris Nebula. That's fine. The very, very important thing that I've found in doing this is don't clip the background. It's very easy to use something like levels or histogram transformation to, pull the midtone over, brighten up the dust, and then bring your black point over to bring the background down. The problem with that is you have a harsh gradient at the end of it. So you want something very smooth. At least I found that to look the best, fits my taste the best. Now, I'm getting the storm that Chris had, so hopefully you can't hear too much of it. All right, so this is the original luminance image. It has not been manipulated yet, but this is the first curves that I would apply for it. I find a point like a quarter to a third of the way off the left, somewhere low down here, pin there, and then just bring the part above it up. And what I'm watching for, the key thing with the not clipping is I want this bottom curve to stay off the bottom. I don't want it to touch down here. So this is a pretty conservative curve. It's not going to do like crazy amount of changes. It's gonna look pretty good, but we don't want to clip the bottom. So when you do that, when you apply that, this is what you get. So the dust is much more prominent here. You can see a lot more structure in it. But it looks nice and smooth, aside from some of the graininess in the image itself, which we'll deal with later. It looks good. You don't have any harsh areas where it seems really, really flat in the background and jumps up, in different levels. So, but it's not enough. If you do this, you're building a mask. So it's not, you need something stronger in order to use this later on. So this is what the histogram looks like after that initial stretch. It's quite a bit wider. And I'll do the same thing again, though I'll probably come over about a third. So a little bit more into the histogram, pin a point again, pull the top up. And again, just watching that the bottom doesn't go flat. We don't clip anything, doesn't smoosh any of the data into nothingness. And when we do that second curve, which you'll want to apply a new curve. You don't want to use the previous one because the histogram has changed. Now we get a much stronger image. You start to see like there's some really low spots with high contrast. Mask-wise, this is getting close, but it's pretty grainy. It's not quite there yet. So I pull out the convolution tool and do a reasonably strong convolution, standard deviation of 10. Everything else is default if you're using PixInsight. The default for standard deviation, I think, is 2.0. And then when we apply that, we get a much better image from a perspective of building a mask, something we want to use to bring out the dust in the next step. Okay. So we've got a starless image that we previously processed. We have a stars image, and now we have a mask. So what do? We take the starless image, and I take it from before I've done any of the processing on it. So yeah, I still want to do the processing. I still want objects like the Iris Nebula in this particular image to be sharpened because we're going to use that in a later step. And we'll go back to pre-processed just after extracting the stars, clone that image, and we'll call that dust. And we then want to use this curves, or this mask we created, the dust mask, and apply some curves onto the image. So this is the before. So this is what we had before we did any manipulation, and I apply the mask and then do a curve, and this is what I get. So this is much more prominent dust. I can see a lot more structure. For myself, I don't see, like in this low spot here, I don't see a harsh step in the image. It feels really smooth. So I like this result, and we can use this to build a final image. Couple things to think about here, and I didn't put a picture of the curves that I use for this. Like it's literally 1 point on the tool and just drag it up. Nothing fancy, no S curves, no second point on it, just drag it up because you've got a mask. There's two options though when doing this, because this is a color image. You can either pull on the color K and PixInsight, or you can pull on the luminance. This is going to be, if you're trying this out, I recommend trying both just to see what they look like. For the data sets that I'm doing, loud thunder. For the data I'm working with, I've found that I got a lot more color noise in the dusty image like this when I used, I pulled on the RGB. So I pull on the luminance to bring, it's more grayscale, but I like the result better. Your mileage may vary. Play around, see what you can get out of the data. But there's a problem if you see here, Iris. So the data on the left is the other color image we processed. The data on the right, the iris is blown out like crazy. So we're gonna have to fix that. So we'll blend the images together. So stars, we've got starless, and then we have dust. What I have been using is Affinity Photo. Any tool where you can bring in like you export it as probably a 16-bit, or I probably export as a 32-bit, but 16 is more than enough TIFF, and then bring it into another tool like Affinity Photo, GIMP, Photoshop. I'm sure there's a slew more that I'm not familiar with, as long as it can do layers. So I've got the 3 images here. One of the nice things too is you can play around with additional tweaks to your image within these tools. I've also found, I didn't show this in the presentation, but for the dust, I like a more translucent feel to it. So after stretching it, I will add a levels in Affinity Photo here, or PixInsight, its histogram transformation, and I'll pull the black point up a bit. It just gives it a little bit more translucent feel, which I personally like. So I've got the dust. If we look at the iris, it's quite different from the dust. That curves we applied with the mask really made a big difference in the dusty regions surrounding the Emission Nebula, or I'm sorry, the Reflection Nebula. But we want that reflection bit, and also these other the spiral, barred spiral, and I can't remember what this is over here, but some other thing. And I put the stars in there just to see what it looks like. And sometimes I will take the stars from this and use them, but not always. So what I do is apply a mask to the non-dust image. And I want to pull out just specific regions. And I don't, I'm not building the mask blind. I build it while looking at the data and just kind of brush in what looks reasonable. And then I might come back and edit the mask and clean up some areas here because it's basically an airbrush and I'm kind of painting blind while manipulating the mask. But after doing that, you can see the iris is no longer this white bright thing. You get the nice blue, it's tamped down, and you just kind of blend whatever your tastes are. And like I said, I put the stars in just to take a look and see what it looks like. And compared to what we were seeing earlier, you could definitely see the dust with the field of stars. For this particular image, I did not keep the stars. I exported the dust with the iris and two other objects as one image, and then I combined it in PixInsight. And this is what I ended up with. I think I must have done something like the background is a little bit more translucent too. So I must have done something to clip that just a little bit.
No, that's very impressive.
Thanks. And so just some, final thoughts on this just around the processing. There's a couple of key things just to reiterate, like the I didn't harp on it much, but the background extraction, how you pull out your light gradients, really important, can really impact the final result. I was finding using the dynamic background extraction to work better. And I simply created large samples across the entire image. I think like pixel size of like 200, and just generated it across the entire image. I might move it off of like the Iris Nebula, but otherwise left it as is. Building your mask is really important, though not hard, especially if you'll know if you've got your background extraction right once you start looking at the building the mask, because you'll start seeing if there's any imbalance or feel like it's heavy dust in one region or versus another. Careful application of curves with that mask, and then finally the blend and what you do there. Like all these are the key differentiators from like a quote normal workflow, whatever that might mean for you. And just to show, like, again, like that was the full frame before, but this is what I decided to cut it down to. This is the original image without any of the processing done, just stretched with the screen transfer function. And after processing, that's what we get.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, like pulling out the light pollution and then focusing carefully on the dust, what you can do with the images.
Stellar pollution.
Naveen, did you realize there was that much dust there while you were working on the acquisition?
Yeah, I knew it was a dusty region. I had seen other wide field shots of the area. I didn't know exactly where. I just kind of was like, oh, I'm gonna center on this area generally and see what happens. But yeah. Oops.
It's amazing.
What are the length of the subs?
5 minutes at
Oh,
F2. It's insane.
Wow. I wish I had your backyard.
Yeah, I think Nina was saying I needed to take like a 5-second exposure. I'm like, I don't want that many files. Okay, so what I do just to, I do saturate bright stars when I go with 5 minutes, especially with F2. I take for every 5-minute exposure, I also take a 15-second exposure, and then I use HDR composition or whatever it is to bring down the brightness of those bright stars and retain color. And it seems to be working all right.
I'm happy with it, or I'd be happy with it.
Oh, and if you're curious what those objects are, I did get the annotated version here.
Yeah, it's really odd. It's like the one that's unprocessed. The galaxy looks good in it, whereas this one, the whole point was to bring out the dust. Now I can't really tell that it is a galaxy. Sorry to be critical.
No, yeah, that's fair. It's very faint.
Well, there, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I can tell that that's a galaxy there. I mean, I guess that because I'm just so used to seeing a galaxy, you know, in the
Yeah.
midst of blackness, not around dust. Maybe that's why I'm.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like I didn't look at their focus on that object really at all. So what we see in this one is the results of whatever processing I thought looked good for the iris.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. Like that, yeah, that could be tamped down a little bit to show a little better structure.
Like a nice barred spiral.
Yeah, it's cute. Oh, well, I mean, in this field of view, it's cute, I'm sure. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share today. Any questions, thoughts, comments beyond what we already have? Happy to talk about it, or
Yeah, great presentation and great results. I was just wondering, at what point in your processing did you get the blacks to come out in the that picture? I see it's like a nice black background behind the dust. How do you do that without getting the dust to get to?
okay, let me bring it back up. Sorry for stopping the share. So you're talking about like this region over here?
Yeah.
I believe that what I did is probably using levels or histogram transformation to move the black point a little bit on the dusty image before combining it with the stars.
Right before you combine it with the stars.
Yeah, late in the game, I've found that if you use the black point like really late in the processing, it can, you know, give you that sense of, you know, there's stuff behind it. Like get that neat, like, so it's not just like a field of dust that just kind of wanes of it. It's just, yeah, I like that myself. So. It's worth playing with, and I like taking it into Affinity Photo, or, you know, other tools like that, because then you can easily play around with it and other things within different layers to see how it impacts the image. I like the power of PixInsight, but that's the one thing I wish they had in there, and I understand it's not going to happen, but you can always dream, right?
Right. Well, speaking of dreams, I mean, what would probably be? What's your goal as far as like what's the ultimate IFN image you would like to take? Sorry.
I think the next, I mean, it's only about the next one. I don't know if there's an ultimate. I think the next thing I'd like to target is Pleiades and get dust around that, or actually Polaris.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
I've seen someone do Cassiopeia also.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive too.
Yeah, Polaris is one where I'm like, it's
That's going to be difficult to guide on.
difficult to impossible. The only time I tried, I was out at Big Woods 2-3 months ago, and I think we had enough clouds rolling in where I ended up just ditching everything. But I think, yeah, guiding wise, I probably wouldn't even bother. It's just, I don't know what the computer would do.
Yeah, I think PhD or whatever you would use would just hate you for it, pretty much. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what's going on here? The sky's not moving enough. You know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it happened. I mean, whenever somebody mentioned the Heart Nebula in the chat, what was it? That's something that I've always had to do whenever I get to the same, I guess, what am I trying to think about? Is it right? Anyway, the circles that enclose from Polaris all the way out to Cassiopeia, because when I start imaging things like the Heart Nebula or whatever, yeah, I get a lot of the guiding gets pretty fussy after that, and it gets to a point where I just like I cheat and I go about like maybe 20 degrees away from the object, further towards meridian, and just say that I was like, okay, guide here, and then I just put it back to that, and usually it behaves. But I have seen what looks almost like field rotation occur.
Huh. What is the what's the declination of Heart?
Yes. Okay. Heart Nebula. Oh gosh. I have to pull that on my. Why do you do this to me? Okay. Anybody else typing, getting to Wikipedia faster than I can? Go for it.
You ask me the hard questions, Chris. Like, where is
No,
that
I mean,
object
you
in the
could-
night sky? I'm like, I don't know. It's a pretty picture. That's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Heart Nebula, Nebula Parent. Okay, well, it doesn't look like I'm gonna find it anytime soon. But anyway,
What's the question you're trying to answer?
we're trying to figure out what the coordinates are for celestial coordinates for Heart Nebula.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay, thank you. I can't get my planetary up fast enough here.
The RA is 2 hours and 33 minutes and DEC is plus 61, 26 minutes.
Plus 61. Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, but that's something that's I got another one that it complained about, if I remember correctly, was I think it was the elephant trunk too.
Okay. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got
again-
Stellarium up now. So there's Heart, and then Elephant Trunk is like
Yeah.
pretty much the same.
Oh, yeah, it's
I
pretty
mean,
much the same. Yeah.
10
okay.
degrees difference, but or no, not even. Sorry, 57.
Yeah, so it gets up there,
Huh.
but I mean, shoot, what version of Stellarium is that?
I don't know.
0.20.4, is that what it? Oh, no, that's the plugins. Okay.
Oh yeah, no. Where do I?
Well,
do
I'm
I
looking
see-
at you. I'm looking at there at the top of your window, the heading right there. I think it says 0.2.
Oh, okay.
0.4.
Yeah, 0.20.4.
Okay, I'm way behind on that. I think mine's like in the teens still.
Oh, I don't think I've updated mine for a year or two now, so it works.
Yeah.
Has anybody put like artificial horizon in Stellarium? If you haven't tried that, you need to.
Oh, does it help?
Yeah. So there's my backyard. Can see where there's where I shoot between like
Oh,
all this
that's-
beautiful stuff between these two houses.
Yeah, no, yeah, I remember we talked about that all the time.
Yeah. But it's really cool. You can use the same artificial horizon in Stellarium and probably other planetary software for tools like Nina. Just
Were you
pretty
able to
cool.
get Rhodophia history there?
Well, wait,
Okay,
let
so-
me see. I could, but actually the data I used for that image that I have is from Bigwoods.
Oh, okay, all right.
But yeah, let's see.
I was like, you could get that from there, man. That's impressive.
Oh no. Terry's.
Figure out the outline for that artificial horizon.
Come on. There it is.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at you.
I'm lazy. I like dance buttons. Sorry, there was a question about the outline.
Yeah, how do you figure out the outline?
Oh, okay. Let's see. So sometime last summer, after a night of imaging, So I knew the scope was polar aligned. And I would get, good coordinates. I just sat out there in the morning and slewed my scope around and took pictures of right as no, it was altitude and azimuth at various points to build this is the top of the roof of neighbor behind me. Here's kind of where a tree and the roof intersect, and then just kind of followed the tree up. It was tedious.
Ah,
And I just did that the whole way around.
I was
And
hoping
then-
it'd be something that take me 5 minutes.
Oh, well, okay. So there was, Mike Keefe had some software on his phone for building a horizon. It was more of like, I think, used for visual, where you could go somewhere and like hold your phone out in front of you and follow the tree lines, houses, whatever, and then it could present targets that you could see and observe on whatever night you were there based on the obstructions. But I think that one let you export a horizon file as well. But the file itself is really straightforward. It's just one data point is it's either altitude and then azimuth, or the other way around on one row, and you go to the next row, the next and next and next. So it's just a text file. So it's not bad to build. It's just tedious.
Okay, Naveen. All right, does anybody else have any questions? No? All right, well, I thank you very much for that presentation. But yeah, that's a good summary of what it takes to bring the IFN out. But what we may propose down the line, though, is maybe, twisting your arm and doing a workshop on that. So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Thanks very much, Naveen.
No problem. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so now we're in the second part of the meeting. This is the part where we show up our images that we've taken since last time or have processed since last time. Anybody want to share an image?
With the horrible weather we have, I have one picture I can share.
Very good.
Okay, back to sharing one. It's again. So this is the comet C 2017 K2 Pan-STARRS and globular cluster M10. Shot with that Rokinon 135 millimeter with the UV-IR cut filter at
Is this
f2.
cropped?
No. I mean, it a little bit for bad edges, but.
Oh, okay. All right. I never did take a look at the comet, but I mean, that's 135. That's pretty big comet. I hadn't even looked. I haven't looked at the images people have taken ever since it came by. I don't know if Mark has some images of it or not, but yeah, that for a 135 millimeter, that's pretty big, actually.
Yeah, the interesting thing for this particular shot is, zoom in here a bit, is there's a star right next to it when I started imaging, so it makes it look a little bigger, maybe kind of like a double nucleus kind of thing, but
okay, well,
it's not. But yeah, I got 43 minutes of this guy.
I'm surprised that star didn't throw off the stacking.
Yeah, it was fun to mask it out and get all the alignments done. Let me say that. But and I took 30-second exposures for this one, which is not what I typically do, but I wanted to, not have too much feel like movement of the comet between frames. So
Was it moving pretty fast?
in the 43 minutes, I think it ended up somewhere over here. So it moved a good bit.
Mhm.
I don't know how
For
fast.
135 millimeters, that's quite a ways actually.
Yeah.
So in M10, I don't know. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. That's probably around Ophiuchus as well, right?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay, all right. Yeah,
Yeah.
M10. I remember that.
A bit
name.
north because it was above my roof. Ophiuchus would be like
Okay,
I
so it
think
was
below, but
all right.
relatively
Towards
close.
the north. Okay.
Yeah.
Northern edge. All right.
Hopefully next time.
There'll be
images.
some more to go on. Yeah.
Well, I'm working on it. I showed it in the presentation, but I'm working on the dumbbell nebula, the planetary nebula. But I want to get some more, especially S2 for some more interesting color in the
Well,
core.
what is that? Well, was that? Do you mind showing it, or do you want to put that off?
No, I can show. Let me find it. Where did I put it?
So this is all three channels, like because usually we're all three wavelengths. Because usually people when they do planetaries, they tend to stick to just hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen more so than anything. And if you follow the palette correctly, here it looks like there's a lot of oxygen there.
There is, and there's a lot of hydrogen alpha. And if you look inside these like brighter bits, there's like an X almost.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the sulfur.
Okay, so that's what you want to get more of.
Yeah, I just want to, well, I mean, I want more of all of it, really.
Of course.
Not to be greedy, but yeah, I only got an hour of sulfur, and this is F2. I'm sorry, F7, the Esprit 120. And this is a reasonably small target. So this is actually probably about 50% of the image. So the normal image would be rotated, the full frame would be, full image frame would be rotated 90 degrees, and like I cropped it down because the rest of it was just a bunch of stars.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Planetaries tend to be small, but this is a little bit on the, this one's exceptional in size.
Yeah.
Of course, the hardest one would be to get is the, I think it's coming up soon. Oh God, what's that big one called? It's like the biggest one here in the north. Like maybe even the night sky, the Helix Nebula.
Oh, I think that one's pretty low, like pretty
Oh
far
yeah,
south,
it's really,
right?
really low. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got some images. I took an image of it a long, long time ago. I mean, it looked okay, considering. But that was back when I first got started. My DSLR camera was a Rebel 350D Canon, a whopping 8 megapixel camera.
Yeah, I think that one's on my list. I don't know how much.
It's an
I'll
impressive.
get
It's
it.
an impressive. I mean, you get a lot more internal structure on that. If you, of course, that's if the weather cooperates, because it goes beyond cloudy. Getting a clear sky, you got to have this thing to bring out those fine details because it's so low.
Yeah. Well, then for me, I've got probably a half-hour window every night I could get data, so I don't know how likely it is. I'll try. Shooting between houses, fun. But
well, you pulled it off, so I don't want to hear any complaining. Get it done.
I have time, years and years, right?
Yes. Sky's the limit. So, okay. Anybody else have anything to share? No, that's it. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess it has. You've gotten like earthbound nebulosity going around these days. We just got done with the thunderstorm here. I don't know if it's still hitting you out there.
Seems to be quieting up.
Okay, so okay, I haven't gotten a topic picked out for September, but something I was wondering about is getting Roland Archer back here, and because there's most of these faces I don't think I've seen or names from, because I don't see everybody's faces, but they may not have heard about Roland's favorite image acquisition program. Like, for example, Naveen, he uses Nina. I forgot who it was in here. They use SGP, Sequence Generator Pro. What is it? Roland Archer, he uses another one. It's called Voyager, and he gave a decent presentation back in, I want to say it was early 2019. So it's been a while, but I was wondering if there were any new developments in that back. I mean, seeing how much Nina has come along, and wondering if Voyager has done the has come along as well, and see what kind of features it has to offer these days. But anyway, so yeah, keep your eyes out. I mean, let me know if there's anything that you would like to have a presentation done on, and we can introduce it to the group and see if anybody if we have any takers on creating a presentation out of it. So, anyways,
cool.
Okay, I guess we'll see you guys in September.
Very good. Great, Naveen. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Naveen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Guys.
Thank you, Naveen.
Night.